आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। भारत की संतान है हम, जगत गुरु का नाम है हम, आर्यभट्ट और सुश्रुत जैसे ऋषियों का अभिमान है हम, तक्षशिला और नालंदा सा गौरव जिसका, ऐसे भारत की यारों पहचान है हम। विश्व पटल पर फहरेगा तिरंगा प्यारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। मेक इन इंडिया, स्किल इंडिया का हो सपना पूरा, डिजिटल और स्टार्टअप इंडिया अब ना रहे अधूरा। मुद्रा एमी सेमी उद्यमी अपने सूर्य शिखर हैं, हिंदुस्तानी व्यापारी होगा अब जग का सूरा। बिजनेस के आकाश में चमचमकेगा भारत तारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। मेहनत कस खेती कर किसान भरता है अन्न भंडारे, लाल देश का फौजी बन तन खड़ा है सरहद द्वारे। रोटी देता एक लाल है लाज बचैया दूजा, नमन हिंद की सेना करते भारतवंशी सारे। एक अखंड भारत का तुम ही सत्य सहारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। भारतवंशी आन से बान से ध्यान से, धर्म आत्मनिर्भरता का निभाएंगे जी जान से। त्याग विदेशी अपनाएंगे पूर्ण स्वदेशी, गांव से ग्लोब स्वदेशी हो सर्व सम्मान से। एक राष्ट्र हो श्रेष्ठ राष्ट्र गूंजे चहुनारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा।
इसका मार्ग एक ही है, आत्मनिर्भर भारत।
नमस्कार आप सभी को, मैं सुकन्या अवस्थी स्वागत करती हूँ आप सभी का हुनर इंडिया द्वारा आयोजित हमारी साप्ताहिक लाइव वेबिनार में। हुनर इंडिया हर सप्ताह वेबिनार्स का आयोजन करता है जिसमें हम डिफरेंट टॉपिक्स एंड स्किल्स को थरली डिस्कस करते हैं। हुनर इंडिया एक मिशन है, एक विजन है भारत को एक सेल्फ रिलायंट नेशन बनाने का। हुनर इंडिया काम कर रहा है थ्योरेटिकल लर्निंग एंड प्रैक्टिकल लर्निंग के बीच के गैप को ब्रिज करने का। हुनर इंडिया भारत का पहला और इकलौता ई लर्निंग प्लेटफॉर्म है जो कि हर एज ग्रुप की लर्निंग नीड को केटर करता है। अब चाहे आप स्कूल गोइंग किड हो, कॉलेज गोइंग स्टूडेंट हो, कॉम्पिटिटिव अपेयरिंग कैंडिडेट हो या एस्पायरिंग एंटरप्रेन्योर हो, हुनर इंडिया आपके लिए साबित होगा सिंगल विंडो लर्निंग सोल्यूशन। आज का हमारा वेबिनार है स्किल डेवलपमेंट थ्रू एडेप्टिव लर्निंग के ऊपर और आज के हमारे एक्सपर्ट हैं डॉक्टर कमलेश कुमार सर। सर, हम आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत करते हैं कि अपना कीमती समय हमें देने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद और हम आशा करते हैं कि आज आपकी दी गई जानकारी हमारे साथ जुड़े सभी कैंडिडेट्स को बहुत ज्यादा पसंद आएगी। अब देर ना करते हुए हम वेबिनार को आगे बढ़ाएंगे। सबसे पहले मैं एडमिन टीम से रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहती हूँ कि हमारे एक्सपर्ट का इंट्रोडक्शन वीडियो आप प्ले करें।
वर्तमान समय में वर्चू एनालिटिक्स नामक कंपनी में चीफ एनालिटिक्स ऑफिसर के पद पर कार्यरत श्री कमलेश कुमार जी स्टैटिस्टिकल प्रोग्रामिंग एंड आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस टूल्स के एक्सपर्ट हैं। इससे पहले ये सीनियर डेटा साइंटिस्ट, सीनियर डिसीजन एनालिस्ट और डेटा साइंस कंसल्टेंट के रूप में भी अपनी सेवाएं प्रदान कर चुके हैं। इन्होंने इंडियन स्टैटिस्टिकल इंस्टीट्यूट से बैचलर्स इन मैथमेटिक्स, यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ पेरिस से मास्टर्स इन क्वांटिटेटिव इकोनॉमिक्स, टिलबर्ग यूनिवर्सिटी से एमफिल इन इकोनॉमिक्स और डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स एंड फाइनेंस डरहम यूनिवर्सिटी से पीएचडी इन फाइनेंस की डिग्री प्राप्त की। अपनी प्रतिभा और ज्ञान के कारण इन्हें एनएसई एनवायू रिसर्च ग्रांट, पीएचडी स्टूडेंटशिप और सेंटर स्कॉलरशिप जैसे कई शैक्षणिक सम्मान और उपलब्धियां प्राप्त हुई। तो ये है हमारे आज के गेस्ट जिनका एक्सपर्ट के तौर पर हुनर इंडिया स्वागत करता है।
वी वेलकम यू सर। अब आप अपने सेशन को स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं।
Am I audible?
यस।
Thank you, Sukanya, for the kind introduction. Just let me know because I just want to ensure that camera is working and audio is working fine. Then we can continue on the discussion.
Yes,
So
audio is working
just give
fine.
me your thumbs up if you will be able to hear me clearly. Okay, thank you. So as Sukanya
सर आपकी
started the discussion what is the role of skill and what is its importance in developing a nation, building a nation that is going to be like the cornerstone of the world civilization. As we understand, in the history, India has been proven as the cornerstone of civilization. We have seen in the theme song of the program, we have seen a number of innovations, the kind of May I continue? Yes. So, sorry for the disturbance because there are some technical glitches and they were my technical team was fixing the technical glitch. Let me continue. So today's discussion is skill development and assessment. And as you have already seen my introduction, I carry a vast amount of experience related to how to develop a startup, then how to scale that startup, especially in the places which is not very fertile for a startup environment. But given the context of Lucknow, Lucknow has a kind of very rich resource pool because it has an excellent schooling system and some great colleges of the national importance. And because of that, Lucknow has a lot of great talent. So those talent just needs opportunity and proper training to bloom themselves in the professional world. तो इस बात को मैं ध्यान में रखते हुए मैं लखनऊ में वर्चुअल एनालिटिक्स प्राइवेट लिमिटेड की शुरुआत की, जहां पे लोग आके और डेटा रिलेटेड सॉल्यूशंस प्रोवाइड करते हैं, एंड दैट वर्चुअल एनालिटिक्स वर्क्स इन द स्पेस ऑफ higher education, where we help universities to streamline their enrollment process. And that's what my role was at Virtue Analytics. Apart from that, we were doing a number of consulting works, especially in marketing mix modeling, where we were finding that what is the best buck you can get out of your spending on the advertisement. And there, we were helping the brands to optimize their marketing budgets. So today, the theme of the discussion is around that how to develop this skill, and then how you will assess that development, because the assessment is as important as the development, because you understand what are the weak areas, what are the strong areas, and how we can overcome those shortcomings to become a skilled society. So that is the theme of introduction. Then I will take you through the outline of this presentation, जहाँ मैं बताऊंगा कि इस प्रेजेंटेशन में कौन सी बातें करूंगा, कैसे हमारी इंपॉर्टेंस क्या होगी, और इस किस थीम के अराउंड हम लोग कन्वर्सेशन करेंगे। फिर उन थीम के क्रॉस मैं आपको ले जाऊंगा और बताऊंगा कि मेरी एक्सपर्टीज क्या है, क्या उसकी रिलेवेंस है करंट सिनेरियो में, और उन चीजों को हम कैसे इनकलकेट कर सकते हैं करंट सोसाइटी में। So that is going to be the overall takeaway of this whole session. Next, can we go to the outline? Admin, please change the, yes. So this is today's agenda. So understanding the learning challenges. सबसे पहले किसी भी समस्या को सॉल्व करने के लिए उस समस्या को समझना बहुत जरूरी होता है। तो सबसे पहले हम लोग देखेंगे कि लर्निंग चैलेंजेस हैं क्या, और किस तरह के लर्निंग चैलेंजेस हमारे तरह जो कंट्री, जो डेवलपिंग कंट्री से एक डेवलप कंट्री की ओर जाने की कोशिश कर रहा है, सम टाइम बैक वी डिडंट हैव एनी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, तो क्या लर्निंग चैलेंजेस जो हमारे सोसाइटी में अभी हैं। फिर उस लर्निंग चैलेंजेस को ध्यान में रखते हुए स्किल डेवलपमेंट और वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग का क्या रोल हो सकता है हमारी सोसाइटी को ट्रांसफॉर्म करने में। क्योंकि स्किल डेवलपमेंट और वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग का सोसाइटी को ट्रांसफॉर्म करने में एक रोल होता है, तो उस रोल को हम कैसे अपने स्कूल कॉलेज करिकुलम में इंटीग्रेट करें, और फिर उन कॉलेज में करिकुलम में इंटीग्रेट करके हम कैसे अपने स्टूडेंट्स को कन्विंस करें कि दिस इज द पाथ टू सक्सेस। क्योंकि आपको अल्टीमेटली आफ्टर coming out of colleges, you have to go into the wide world, and then you have to perform, and you have to give back to the society that the things that you have learned in the colleges. So therefore, integrating those skill development into curriculum has a paramount importance. Next, what we see in the Western countries, who are much advanced in terms of modern learning solutions, and we have to adapt the things that they have better and the things that we have better in our society, and we have to take a kind of a blended path that is coming from two different expertise areas, and उसके अराउंड हम क्या करेंगे, अपना सॉल्यूशन हम लोग डेवलप करेंगे। और उसी इंडेवियर में हम लोग क्या करेंगे कि इंडस्ट्री के साथ कैसे हमारे कॉलेजेस जो एकेडमिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं वो कैसे कोलैबोरेट करें, और स्टूडेंट्स को कैसे प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपोजर दे, सो व्हेन दे गो आउट ऑफ देयर कॉलेज, then they will not face the kind of hurdle they are facing today or years back. So उन चीजों को हमें ओवरकम करना होगा। और उसके साथ फिर हम क्या करेंगे कि सेशन को कंक्लूड करेंगे, जहां पे फिर आई विल बी ओपन फॉर एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ क्वेश्चंस एंड आंसर्स, और उसके साथ फिर हम लोग नेक्स्ट टाइम व्हेन वी आर गोइंग टू ज्वाइन ऑन सम डिफरेंट एक्साइटिंग टॉपिक उसकी बातचीत करेंगे। ठीक है, लेट्स गो टू दी अंडरस्टैंडिंग द लर्निंग चैलेंजेस, दैट इज ऑन द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड। काइंडली चेंज द स्लाइड। यस, सो सबसे पहले हमें देना होता है कि एक्सेस क्या है लोगों का, बिकॉज इंडिया यूज्ड टू बी अ वेरी अंडर डेवलप्ड कंट्री। हमारे पास पहले एक जमाना था जब हमारे पास गली गली में एक सिस्टम हुआ करता था, स्कूलिंग सिस्टम। सोसाइटी में एक इनब्रेड की लर्निंग सॉल्यूशंस हुआ करती थी कि आप एक पर्टिकुलर फैमिली से आते हैं तो आपको एक पर्टिकुलर तरीके का स्किल गेन करना होगा, और एज ए सोसाइटी उस स्किल को एंटरटेन करती थी, उसको फिर इनकलकेट करती थी सोसाइटी में, और फिर उस बंदे को कि अपना जो सोसाइटी में वो रिकग्निशन होता था वो मिलता था। Later on there are a lot of stigma get attached to these things, and things get bad, and ultimately be in shambles 200-300 years back, और हमारा सारा स्कूलिंग सिस्टम वो खत्म हो चुका था। उसके बाद क्या हुआ कि हमारा देश आजाद हुआ, देश में मतलब कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की कमी थी, रेडियो और टीवी ये सब नई नई टेक्नोलॉजी आ रही थी। उसके साथ साथ जो हमारा स्कूल का जो एक्सेस था, जो लर्निंग का, हमारे सारे गांव में स्कूल नहीं थे। पहले क्या होता था कि देयर वर डेडिकेटेड टीचर्स, कि आपका काम है केवल टीचिंग करना, सोसाइटी का काम है कि हाउ दोज टीचर्स गेट कंपेंसेटेड, एंड दैट ऑल होल दिस भिक्षा सिस्टम एंड ऑल दोज थिंग्स लाइक गॉट डेवलप्ड। और उसमें क्या होता था कि स्टूडेंट जाते थे, अपना फैमिली छोड़ते थे और जाते थे, एजुकेशन लेते थे, दे लर्न दी रियल लाइफ स्किल्स, और उन स्किल्स को लेके फिर वो सोसाइटी में वापस आते थे। अगेन दे बिकम्स लाइक ब्रेड अर्नर्स एंड दे कंट्रीब्यूट ए पार्ट फॉर द एजुकेशन ऑफ द सोसाइटी। सो अल्टीमेटली क्या था कि इफ यू लुक अप इन मॉडर्न कॉन्सेप्ट्स, the education system was completely subsidized by the society, because उस टाइम में गवर्नमेंट नहीं होती थी, उस टाइम में किंग्स होते थे, बट कल्चर वहां भी था, सोसाइटी वहां भी थी, एंड दैट वाज द नॉर्म ऑफ द सोसाइटी, दैट यू हैव टू गिव certain things to teachers, so teachers won't have to depend on their livelihood, and ultimately they will put their complete focus on educating the society. As a result, whatever your economic status is, you had access to education and you can learn things. So that was like our ancient culture. बट जब हमारा स्कूलिंग सिस्टम हमारे यहाँ आया, जो उपाध्याय सिस्टम आया, वेयर लाइक यू हैव टू कंट्रीब्यूट इंडिविजुअली टू गेट एजुकेशन, उससे क्या हुआ कि हमारे यहाँ जो शिक्षा का जो स्तर था, उसमें क्योंकि एक जो गिवन जो फ्रेमवर्क होता है, व्हेन दैट फ्रेमवर्क चेंजेस, उससे क्या होता है कि आपको सोसाइटी में नई जो फ्रेमवर्क होती है उसको अडेप्ट होने में टाइम लगता है। Nowadays we have kind of mixed setup. We have kind of the educational institutions which are like privately run, and where like you have limited public support, but there are educational institutions where you have complete public support. But still, when you look up the number of schools in India, we don't have like enough number of schools in India, and because of like uh, the colonial past, and like because of the checkered history that we had, and we have like a lot of issues after independence, in the like post in a democratic India, like education was one of the priorities, because our founding leaders of this nation, like they understood that by education we can create a skilled society, and that society will take India to its destined position. Because हम पहले विश्वगुरु थे, और उस विश्वगुरु को चलने के लिए हमें क्या चाहिए था? एजुकेशन, दैट इज द इनेबलर। उसके लिए क्या हुआ कि हमारे यहाँ गांव गांव में स्कूल बनाया गया। इफ यू लुक अप लाइक जस्ट 20-30 years बैक, हमारे बहुत सारे गांव में स्कूल्स नहीं थे। दैट वाज वन ऑफ द प्राइम कंसर्न ऑफ दोज पंचायत्स, लोकल लीडर्स, कि गांव में स्कूल हो। Nowadays almost like villages has schools, like a very few villages like that might not have schools, and वहां पे क्या है कि वहां टीचर्स की सप्लाई भी है, बट देयर इज लाइक सम कंसर्न्स, दैट इज द क्वालिटी कंसर्न्स। क्योंकि हमें सिर्फ एजुकेशन देना नहीं है, हमें क्वालिटी एजुकेशन देना है, कि अल्टीमेटली जब तक हम क्वालिटी मीट नहीं कर पाएंगे, हाउ वी कैन थिंक लाइक वी कैन ट्रांसफॉर्म एन एजुकेटेड सोसाइटी, हाउ कैन वी कैन थिंक ऑफ लाइक वी कैन develop a skilled society. That's why the access to learning is the key. But as like the technology has grown, as like we have like very efficient way of like reaching out to people from a distant like location. That's the way like I am interacting with you guys, because I am in like in a distant location in Lucknow, and then I am like speaking to like people all over the world because of internet penetration. So if you look up the like in the current scenario, India has like almost like government is taking initiative to connect all the panchayats with like the high speed internet. So what will happen, that every village will have access to internet. Internet will lead to like the world outside that panchayat, and that could be like not only entertainment, not only like the people like filing their like the application for the subsidies, but that can be an enabler that will help them to get access to education. इस उद्देश्य के लिए गवर्नमेंट के पास लाइक हमारे पास डेडिकेटेड टीवी चैनल्स हैं, हमारे पास डेडिकेटेड लाइक फ्री वीडियो स्ट्रीमिंग चैनल्स हैं, जहां पे मतलब कि टीचर्स जाते हैं, अपने लेक्चर्स रिकॉर्ड करते हैं, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दैट लाइक द सप्लाई ऑफ एजुकेशन हैज इम्प्रूव्ड. But still, when you have to teach like each and every citizen of your country, not only supply, but you have to also help them that what is the demand, how we are helping them to understand that how education can be an enabler for them to understand the things which is which that is not in their limit, because it will help them to explore their economic opportunity that is available to them in independent India, because everybody is free to look for their whatever skills they are in best, they can look for their opportunity in that skill. Similar thing if you look up in the government initiative, some of things which we have seen in the past, the Khelo India. When the Khelo India happened, the access to sports was to the very remote corners of the country. And because of that, nowadays we will find India is doing considerably better at world stage. Our athletes that is coming from remote corners of India, they are going and competing with the world, bringing medals for us. So similarly, those things are very selective things that you can easily see. Media covers a lot, but the things access to learning, because the government also conducts surveys, but those surveys are not very publicized, because ultimately when you look up now election is at the corner, then government should be assessed that how efficient they are in enabling the people have access to learning. And learning could be that is a vehicle of social change. That's why access to learning is important. And since India is inching towards a goal where everybody has access to information, access to education, although there are subsidies, there are paid programs, but we have to ensure that people are understanding that what is the benefit of having education, and then how we can make that education relevant to today's environment, today's society. And that is about the skilling and all that we are going to discuss later in the program. Next, we have the language barrier. So if you look up India as society, because we are ancient culture, the language developed the organically. So if you look up the languages changes every 10 or 15 kilometers. And we have seen that the language can be a bigger barrier. Even you think of leaders, when the Indian Prime Minister goes to South India, he struggles to speak to his own people, because we have different languages, and then he needs a translator sometimes. Sometimes he speaks in English, but still he won't be able to connect the chord with the common people, because there's a language barrier. Similarly, if some teacher is there, because a student has some language spoken at home, and that teacher is teaching that student in English or in some other language, then the student won't be able to understand that what teacher is trying to say. And because of that, that will create a barrier for the learning, because he has to understand the language, then the concepts, then he has to find that what are the the understanding, misunderstanding that concepts. Again, he has to translate himself in that language which teacher can understand, in case it is an interactive session. Otherwise, if it is not an interactive session, it is a big barrier for the students to understand that what the teacher is teaching to them. So that's why we have to build a learning culture that should have a multilingual. Nowadays, when you look up the technologies are available that can translate one language to another language, and it will help us to bridge that sort of gaps. But if you see that states have to understand how many languages are spoken in the state, and are we considering those considerations when we are trying to educate those people, or educate those students who are on the ground, who are in the remote corners of the state or remote corners of the country. So that's why the education material, and that material should be translated in different languages, so there should be no barrier between the information and the people, and that will lead to a kind of a skilled society. Next, coming to we have teacher shortage and their quality. And it is well established. You might have read number of newspaper, they call about the how many teacher vacancies are there. The state is not filling up those vacancies, because the education is a joint subject. State also has some sort of say, and the center also has some sort of say. So basically, when we don't have enough teachers, and then hiring teachers it has own burden on the state exchequer or center exchequer, because you have to pay salaries, pensions, other benefits related to. So sometimes, considering the budget constraint of the state, hiring a lot of teacher is also difficult. So what we can do, we can make the existing teachers as enablers and technology as a kind of, some sort of medium that can bridge the gap between the teachers shortage or the quality of teacher which is available on the ground, and the actual, the thing which students should, get the access to education. Though teachers, can be trained, those teachers can be trained to use technology, because like the technology supply is already there, the lectures are there, so teachers can understand those lectures, and then they can help those students to understand that what exactly that lecture is trying to say. And when we will the build that, when we will break that language barrier, then the teacher's role will be mediated, because the students will be able to understand those things there in their native language, and that will help less reliance on the physical teachers which are available in the classes. Next is digital divide. So what is digital divide? Basically, when you look up in the cities where we have a great penetration of internet, people have access to smart devices where they can watch lectures, they can raise questions. But there are people who don't have access to the smartphones. They don't have access to a data data plan. But after geo phenomena, India has a great mobile penetration. People have a considerable amount of people have access to data, internet. They can watch videos, but still there are pocket of population who don't have access to those digital technology. So for those people, we have to work out something related with the panchayat, something related with the cities, where we can have some sort of smart screen where students can go and attend those classes, and those things can be the kind of the incentives the farmers get when they come and they get participate in educational programs where they understand that how what sort of the crop is better for their land. So these sort of things we can also help those students to understand. Next point is gender disparity. So there is a kind of some sort of stigma within the society that help them to differentiate between the boys and girls. And then when it comes to the education, the priorities of the boys and girls education has a differentiated difference within the family. What I mean to say, the family, sometimes they give higher priority to their male folks for getting them enrolled to a quality education compared to girls. So we have to government is coming with some excellent plans to help families, make them incentivize families to get their girls admitted to educational program. They're monetary incentives, but ultimately we have to build that sort of culture within the society, that sort of the mindset that girls and boys, they can be equally effective economic agents. That's why we need to educate both of them. There are some sort of ingrained societal norms that the girls stay, boys stay as the father's family, but girls goes to another family. That also build some sort of the preferential treatment of boys compared to girls. But we have to bring uh, all sort of the legal protections that we have around the girls and their rights within the family, and those sort of things can bridge this sort of gender disparity gaps. Next is the infrastructure and facilities. So infrastructure and facilities, that includes digital penetration, that includes the quality of the schools, uh, access of the schools, connectivity of a school to the roads, the toilet in the road, clean water in the school, electricity connection within the school. So these sort of infrastructure and the facilities, do we have schools have the smart screens where they if sometimes if they don't have enough teachers, then what students can do, they can be tuned to those academic channels, and students can go and learn those things. So there government needs to take a lot of incentives, initiatives. Also I will encourage private parties and other agencies to bridge that gap and help to meet that sort of the targeted infrastructure and facilities for the learning. Then we have the learning outcomes and assessment. So when you see there are some testing methodology where you go and you start giving the exams. Then they will the interactive system will provide you a problem, and once you will answer that problem based on your responses, they will give you the next problem. So that is called the adaptive learning and adaptive questioning. So basically what the system behind the scene does, it understand what is your conceptual level, and if you are able to answer the question at a good conceptual level, they will give you further a higher conceptual level question to further assess that what is your level of expertise within that domain. But you are unable to answer a particular question, then what they do they drop the quality of the complexity of questions, and then they try to ask you the answer of that question, and based on that they develop that what is your level of expertise, because level of understanding the level of expertise helps you that where this student is featuring and what sort of things this student where this student needs training, what sort of training that is which is required to bring that student up to that level that he can be an effective economic agent. Next is educated versus degree holders. So this is very important because when you go to the society, and if you look up the the news papers, news channels, there is a core argument that is coming from the layman that, hey, I have degree but I don't have a job. So degree and education, those two are two different things. Degree is something when your quality of education is not up to the mark, then your assessment is not up to the mark. And what you do in the process of providing education to the society, what you do, you try to give degree to the students. And since the student has not completed his learning process, because there's a lack of proper assessment, proper learning process that is going to assess the students, and then it is going to assign whether the student eligible for a particular kind of degree, and you provide that degree to the students. So as a result, the student has degree, the student shows that he has understanding of a particular concept, but on the ground, he do not understand that concept. So in that case, getting that students in a job market and making that student an economic agent that is going to help society is difficult, because the student is not educated, who do not understand the degree which is carrying, what sort of expertise that degree requires to become that degree holder. So although degree is there, and that is called some sort of degree inflation. So you have a lot of fancy degrees, but you don't understand the basic concepts. You don't understand that how those education can be monetized, how that education can be related to some sort of value creation for the society. So when that gap is there, although you have degree, but you have no economic importance, because you don't have that sort of the educational quality which is required for value generation in the society. And ultimately, what you see, that market is much less, because it only rewards the people where you can expect that they can get the value for their money, the money which they are paying towards the salaries, which they are paying towards keeping those employee on roll. If the company thinks that it cannot get that value, then it will not pick that as students. And aligning with that thought, if you look up nowadays, there's a lot of debate around the placement rate in the colleges, the placement rate in IITs, that is below 50% nowadays. Because of there are a lot of all other macroeconomic regions, I can bring a few of them. For example, election is going on in India, then there are elections in USA. Again, there are sort of political instability in UK, where we don't know what sort of government is going to come. As a result, what happens, like, in these campuses, most of the companies that go and do recruitment are the, like, external market exposed companies. So basically, most of their work, they come from the developed countries. And once they have uncertainty in those developed world, these companies do not want to take any risk, and they just want to become, like, the risk averse, and they don't choose to, like, put people on their role, because they understand, like, once there is some clarity related to what will be the business outcome in, like, business environment post election in those countries. Based on that, they can immediately, like, hire people, and then they can, like, build, because firing people in industry in a regular job setup is difficult, because there are certain liability that company owns, and once it fires, like, any particular employee, then it has to, like, follow those sort of liabilities. And because of that reason, we see that there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, and companies are not that excited to, like, to add the freshers to their role. So that is the, like, key reason why we see, like, the campus placement is lower than 50% in, like, the prestigious campuses. We can move to next slide. So connecting with, like, that discussion, like, the discussion that we are just having about the placement scenario in the IITs. So IIT is one of the premier institutes that we all know. But when you look up, like, that what exact situation on the ground. So if you look up, I have, like, this is close to 10 years of data. And in 10 years of data, what it is measuring, it is uh, assessing those engineers, that when they come out of colleges, how much ready they are for, like, being employable. And if you look up their percentages, that is ranging, like, something between 45% to 60%. That means on the in the better scenario, 40% are, like, those graduates which are not eligible for, like, taking up the engineering job. That means the training and assessment that we have in the country, that is not up to the mark. Because if somebody is graduating from engineering, because for engineering, if you look up, like, for the engineering seats, there are common entrance exams. Based on, like, the outcome of those exams, those students get admitted, then they, like, undergo training for 4 years, then they graduate from the colleges. And despite of that situation, if we have, like, in the best scenario, 40% of students are not employable, then it says, like, there is some problem in the, like, the uh, skill development and the training of those students. So when you look up the education is a kind of, it's a vehicle of intergenerational transformation and social change. So what is this intergenerational transformation? So when you look up the class with society, like, the way we have, like, the people below the poverty line, above poverty line, that is, like, some sort of, classification of uh, society based on, like, the economic might that they have. So when you look up in India, if somebody is, like, belonging to people below the poverty line, and the person is educated, he takes, like, just next 4 or 5 years to become people above the poverty line. So that means if he gets the proper education, or proper education means, like, it could be, like, some skill. If it has proper skill, then his, like, opportunity to earn economic outcomes increases tremendously. And as a result, whatever be the, like, history of his father, whatever will over with the role of his father, whatever, like, the ration card his father carries, he can migrate from one level to another level. So that's why, like, the education is, or a skill is an enabler that helps people to migrate from one class to another class. That means if you born below the poverty line, and if government is providing you education, that means that can be a social enabler that will make you people above the poverty line. That means government don't have to spend money to bring you out of poverty line. Only it has to, like, ensure that you get the quality education, and that is already a public good, and the government is already spending on that. So if we can just improve that public good, that education is, like, will be at the, like, the world class level, where the students can go and learn, and then they can, like, migrate from one strata of the society to another strata of the society. So that means you are improving the overall profile of country. You are improving the overall purchasing power of the country. You are improving overall per capita GDP of the country, just providing education. So education is not only like the vehicle of intergenerational transformation, social intergenerational transformation for a particular family, but it is bringing the broader concept, that is the social change, that your country profile is improving, your country well-being is improving, your country's overall level of health access, uh, then level of access to quality nutrition, all those things improves because you are helping students, you are helping your population to having access to education and skills, so he can improve his the probability of getting higher compensation, and that result he will income will improve, and he will be able to afford the public the non-public goods, when the luxury goods, for example, even the basic necessities such as the quality clothing, quality food, full nutrition, then entertainment. So those things it has a multiplicative effect. So suppose a student is coming from uh, below poverty line, and he is entering into the middle class, he is going to spend money in the market. Ultimately that is going to boost the tax revenue for the government. As a result, if the tax revenue of the government increases, it is going to further add that money to the public good supply, the construction of roads, the construction of quality hospitals. So it has the multiplicative effect. So the investment, the public investment in the education, is going to be kind of the kind of investment you do in some sort of assets. That's the multiplicative effect. So for example, when you see the advertisements, if you are investing today, then it is going to give you better returns tomorrow, and it is going to ensure your future. So if a country is going to invest in the education, it is going to ensure its future, because it is going to produce the productive population that is going to the add more economic value, gives more tax revenue to the government. So for example, the government will have more money to spend, and it has in terms of the national defense and all those things, which is which requires a lot of revenue. For that, the government have more disposable income, and government be able to spend that money for different purpose. So that's why it is very important to bridge that gap and help the society and give them access to better education, so they can help to transform the overall social profile. We can move to the next slide. So in order to develop that sort of society, what is required? The requirement of the hour is the skill development and vocational training. So when I say skill development and vocational training, that means what in addition to education? So there is a concept of called blended learning, which is a shift from the traditional classroom learning. Because if I go and teach all the theories to you, and then you don't know how to apply those theories to practical work. So when you look up, I have seen one of the video of one of the chief ministers of India. That was the chief minister was making a statement that I have read A plus B ka whole square, but I have never applied that thing in my day-to-day life. And this is a kind of sorry condition of the country, because the person do not know the person of chief minister's stature do not know that what is the importance of teaching people that how the what is the square, why be a square things, and what is in the importance of it, because that guy was never trained for that. And as a result, we have that kind of leader that do not have that sort of vision, that what is the importance of. So ultimately what you see that the whole society is getting defeated, because society is unable to train its population, and out of that population the leaders are coming, and those leaders do not understand that what is the importance of education in the society. So what it is required, whatever the past is the past, but we have to build a kind of environment where the students can go to school, but at the same time the student will be able to learn that how he can use the things that he is learning into school in terms of value creation. So for example, if a particular student, like, because if you look up in the Western countries, the students, they go to the primary school, and then based on the performance in the primary school, they have different, like, strata of the students. And the strata of the student defined by their, like, the academic excellence. So the students who fall in, like, the upper strata, where, like, they have great academic excellence, they go for, like, the education for which you require, like, greater skills in terms of learning. Then there are, like, the students who are, like, in the middle strata, they go for the less skilled jobs, like, the vocational training and all. Then the students who fall, like, below, they go for, like, the jobs that require a lot of, like, the uh, basically the physical strength, and like things like where you don't require a lot of, like, skill. So that's why, like, in those countries we have, like, that sort of systems. So similarly, if a student, based on, like, what is the profile of the student, how, like, good student in learning, because what I believe, like, when maybe, like, people may have, like, some different opinion on that, but what I see, that every student is different, and every student a different level of understanding about, like, the uh, theoretically difficult concepts. Some student has, like, the good aptitude for the some skills. Some student do not have that good aptitude for that kind of skills. So we have to, like, map the students with their aptitude, about with the skills which is required to become one. So if a student, somebody, like, he tried to become a doctor, but he's not good at biology, there's no point of, like, pushing that student to learn biology. And we have to educate parents that we don't have to push students where they are not good at. Rather, we have to, like, motivate those students towards the, like, the education where they are good at, where their interest lies, where their capability is right. Maybe, like, sometimes, like, there could be issues, like, the student has a kind of, want to become one, but he do not have required credentials to become that. So suppose if a student says, like, he wants to become an engineer, but he don't know how to do calculus. In that case, there should be counseling, and, like, help that a student, that since you have difficulty in understanding calculus, first you try to see if calculus is your thing. If calculus is not your thing, don't try to become an engineer, because ultimately you are going to become a bad engineer. And how that will happen, how that, like, self-realization, how that, like, that sort of assessment will happen, that will happen through when they will be exposed to, like, the day-to-day work, such as internship, workshops, seminars, where internship, like, they can go to a different company campus, they can learn how their, like, colleagues are working, and they try to see, like, whether they like that kind of work. Then in the workshop, which is a kind of, semi-learning environment, where the experts come and, like, make people understand and work along with them. Seminars where, like, expert comes and, like, provide his experience, and, like, the way things that he has developed so far, and the kind of understanding he shares those understanding with the people. So these sort of things, like, help us to do the, like, self-assessment, self-realization, that where my expertise lies, what I can become. Then we should have, like, in community colleges, vocational programs. So these sort of colleges where the students who are, like, do not have access to university education, they can go and they can suppose, like, if a student at the time when he was in the age of, like, going to a college, but he has, like, a certain circumstances, he won't be he was not able to attend, like, those colleges. He can, like, we can bring those sort of, like, people who are interested in understanding, like, more skills to community colleges, vocational programs, where we can make them educate about, like, the things which they can learn, and they can, like, reproduce, they can become an effective economic agent. Then we have, like, the industry certification programs, where the students, if you are enrolled in a university, they can go to those industry. They, like, so for example, like, cyber security, for example, let's say uh, going to civil engineering exposure, like, going to a place where, like, the building construction is happening, and, like, he will help the designers, architect to make better buildings. Then somebody he just want to become a mason, he can, if he has basic education, can go and take those trainings. So ultimately when you look up, uh, for example, if somebody wants to become a builder, because builder is a kind of high paying job in developed countries, and when you look up somebody has do they have that sort of right side of exposure, although it doesn't require you to become to understand a lot about the theoretical thing, but it requires a really precise hands to build things, because this is very skilled work. Then we have the technology that can be enabler to make people understand that how they can train themselves to become effective economic agent. For example, like the simulation and virtual reality. So if you look up, I got an opportunity to go to Power Training Institute, where they were developing a solution that will be around the virtual reality. So because if you look up the power, uh, all those power generation units, because that work on a very high temperature, and it is very difficult to make somebody go there and understand how to maintain those power plants. So what they are doing, they are just developing a kind of virtual reality where you will put Oculus on your hand, on your eye, and you will take yourself into the environment inside the a boiler, that how you are going to monitor the functioning of the boiler, how you will go and how you will do some repair work. So although the person is not going inside the boiler, because that has a health hazard, and it has given risk, because the person do not understand so far how to operate it, he may make mistakes, and at there could be chances of a bigger accident. But we can create a virtual scenario where the person can go and understand in that virtual scenario that how to maintain that particular thing. It will give that confidence that how he is going to go in the real environment. Similar sort of simulation that is happening for the fighter pilots, because taking pilots in the plane and training them is really expensive, because sometimes it can cost their life if their mistakes happen. So what people do, they put in the simulation. So similar sort of modules should be developed for all sort of the skills. For example, if somebody wants to learn building, and because have for learning building, he needs an equipment, there could augmented reality or virtual reality that will help them to understand how to do the building. Robotic surgery. So suppose if because the robotic surgery is relatively new concept. Suppose a doctor is there in the remote corner of India, he wants to understand that how the robotic surgery happens. If we have that sort of simulation module, then the doctor can go and train himself that how he can operate those the robotic surgery tools. So these sort of things can help to build the people who are already employed and doing the the value addition to the society, and it can help them to become a better economic agent. We can move to next slide. So similar sort of thing, here we are showing that doctors, they are training themselves using putting Oculus on their ear, on their eyes, and then they are training themselves to that how to do a surgery. Can we go to next slide? Yes. So next slide is about integrating the skill development into the curriculum. So when you look up the market is a very emerging place, because if particular skill is required, there is no no guarantee that that skill is required in next 5 to 10 years. So for example, take the the concept of the blockchain experts. So when this whole Bitcoin and things came in around 5-6 years back, everywhere people are looking for who are the blockchain experts. And then later people identified blockchain has its own limitations. It can help at some places, and some places it is just going to add a more nuance to overall data storage. As it is people said no, blockchain is the solution which can help in a particular thing but cannot help everywhere. And that's why the market of this blockchain subsided, and then the whole AI thing started after the introduction of this large language based model, where the model is going interact with the people with in a kind of an active economic agent. So earlier this if you look up the particular large language model, The whole thing started in 2017 when the BERT paper came, like, that's a bi-directional learning paper. So what happens, like, how this system that understands the sentences, basically when you make sentences are basically like, it's a kind of, combination of words, and the words appear in a particular, like, pattern, then it makes some sense. If that pattern do not get followed, then these sentences do not make that sense. So understanding that particular pattern, the model, what it does, it like takes those sentences contexts, and then it creates like that sort of a metrics where the words are appearing in a particular thing. So what it does, like it first converts the sentences into a sequence of words, and then it relates like what is the positional importance of those words. Then it also stores those things, and based on that it like creates a kind of mapping that what could be like the way, like when as a kid we don't know like what is the order of like noun, pronoun, and adjective, verb, whatever. So with the time we train ourselves, and then we make like kind of concise, meaningful sentences. Similarly, those like large language model, they make their like meaningful, concise sentences. Then it's start like retaining the context, in what context we are talking this thing. So this is called like semi-supervised learning, where like the machine learning first like understand with the context, and then you try to construct those sentences, and then you do the penalization when machine is not doing well. Then you penalize, and ultimately like understand that what is the probabilistic order of words. So when those machines like and they construct word, then they identify the first word, and then it do the like the probability analysis of all the words that it has access to, and then what is the most probable word in this particular context that is going to follow the current word. So for example, like you look up the identify, then it will look up like the series of words. So what is like the person is trying to identify here, and then it will like find like the maximum probability goes to emerging, then it will put the emerging next, and similar sort of thing, like it is going to iterate every time, and then it will construct the sentence, identify emerging market demand. So basically what we are trying to identify here, we're trying to identify that how the market is evolving, what sort of expertise it needs, and how we can train our population to meet that market demand. So for example, if there is a construction boom, we need more people who have understanding of the like the construction technology. If there is data boom, we need like more people who have understanding of the data sciences. If there is a boom renowned the computer sciences, we need people who are like good computer programmers. So that's why like we have to identify what are the emerging market demand. So for example, look up the example of the gig market. So gig market, like a gig jobs, that kind of delivery boy jobs, like the Zomato, Swiggy, on like other, they hire a lot of delivery boy. So for like if you look up 10 years back, like we have only like those sort of delivery guy, like some couriers companies, and like post office, they only have like that sort of delivery mechanism. But nowadays, if you look up like not only like Zomato, Swiggy, but there are a number of e-commerce players. They have their own delivery boys. They are like dedicated delivery companies that had that sort of talents. For example, like the security, earlier like we have just like the government-based security agent like the police. Now we have a lot of private agencies. So that's why like what is the demand of the market, and based on that we need to produce the talent that is going to meet that market demand. Then we have to map that what is the skills to learning outcomes, that like if suppose somebody wants to become a doctor, that is the learning outcome, that after the learning he has to want to become a doctor. So what sort of skill he requires? He requires biology skills. He requires like the how to measure temperature of the, how to measure blood pressure of a patient. Then he needs to understand like what is the caricature of like the whole human being, what is his BMI, what sort of the skin tones, the like the eye vision, the kind of about the vitals and fundamentals of the body. You need to understand those sort of skills to become an effective doctor. So that's why we need to like always map the skills to the learning outcome, what we want those students to become. Then we have to incorporate the assessment of those targeted skills. So suppose if you want to become a doctor, are you progressing in a proper way? Are you eligible to become a doctor, or you want to become like a nurse? what is your level of expertise, what is your level of skill. So that assessment is like, it's a continuous process, and we need to adaptively monitor that how that student is progressing towards that. So there is some sort of, with the government centralized plan of like, bringing everybody on a central panel where like, government has access to what is the skill level of particular person. And that will help them to map those persons to like, jobs available in the country. So that's an excellent scheme. And if government like, follows that particular thing, it will like, help to uh, bridge the gap between the skill demand and the resources available in the market. Then provide feedback and encourage feedback on the learning experiences. So when you assess the students, you need to make that student realize that how he's performing on the learning outcome. What are the things good? What are the things that can be improved? What are the things that is not so good? Is there some strong feedback to a student, like whether he has to change the stream or he is not eligible for a particular kind of skill job? So we need to provide those. Otherwise, what will happen that the student will waste his own resources, public resources, which is uh, the state is sponsoring, then he is also going to lose his own time. So it's a kind of waste for everyone. So that's why we have to keep a student realize that what is the level of skill and where the students can go. What is your current level, that the student's current level in like in terms of the skill which is required for that particular job. So that will help students to like streamline his learning process and become better in terms of like the efficient economic agent. Then the ultimately like the line is the evaluate, learn, and improve to run in sync with emerging technology. So sometimes like students they have to like because nowadays if you look up like because there are a number of technologies available, there are a number of websites available that help you to understand like what is your skill level. So suppose if I want to become engineer, then I will go and see that like what sort of like skill requirement that is for the engineer. Am I like fulfilling those skill requirements? They are like the testing portals available. I will go and I will give tests that how I'm doing on that testing portal, and then it will help me to assess that what is my current level and what are the things that needs to be learned. How I can improve myself as a better economic agent. So that sort of like it's a kind of a continuous engagement process, and that is going to like with every step we will inculcate these sort of like that we will evaluate, learn, and improve in terms of a skill. Then it is help us to become a better economic agent. It will help us to realize the might that we are looking as a kind of united India and kind of Biswaguru position that we are looking in the world. That's like this is the thing like as a microeconomic level, as an individual level, as an economic agent level, we need to understand these things. And then on the like when you look up the social level, when you look up the like, comprehensive like development of the society, we will be able to like attain that sort of role which is like required to become a Biswaguru. So that is like can we move to the next slide? So next to foster this sort of learning, what kind of like we have to like build the center of competence within our learning centers. So look up here like on the right we have a kind of Venn diagram where we have the center of competence, which is like a center of competence means like it is going to build a kind of educated society that has like required understanding about the concepts and understanding about what is the market requirement. So how that like that center of competence can be thought of, that could be like uh, umbrella unit of government agencies, industry, the entrepreneurs, professional associations and societies, academic institutions. When they all collaborate and bring like what is the requirement of the society, what are the next challenges in next 20 years, how we can create a kind of demography that is going to accept those challenges in the next 20 years. So when we talk about all those vision 2047 or vision something, vision of the 21st century, so those sort of things like which is required, because that is help us to like make the broad level planning, and we have to work towards that broad level plan. Then to meet like that sort of target, what is like the required. So first is like identify the interest of the students as they complete their schools. So they're kind of universal database that will map the students with their competency level. And that will help us to understand like what kind of a student competency level we have. Because nowadays, like NCERT conducts surveys in the states, and they evaluate a student based on their learning outcomes. But those are like sample surveys. We should have a kind of universal database where all the students' marks it should be there, and the students should understand that where they fall in the overall India, and that will help them to decide that what sort of career they want to pursue. Then we have to educate the students at the time of undergraduate admission, because undergraduate education is the the phase where you transform your profile from a school student to a college students, because there are concepts there's no knowledge without college. So the college is kind of that is the transformation of the students from a student to an economic agent. And that is the time where we should align those students to their career goals. That what you want to become. Is this the course that you should pursue? Are you really ready for to understand the complexity or the concept which is required for this course? So this sort of assessment should happen at the time of the undergraduate admissions. Some of things the kind of common interest tests, which is one of the attempts toward the making a level playing field for all the students, and they can go and compete whoever a student they fall on the top and they get the admission. So that is a kind of a good concept. But if we have suppose a student has a bad day on that day, so that student may miss out that opportunities. That's why there should be kind of the overall assessment of the student's profile, because some student might be a great learner but not a great person in the examination hall. So we have to also understand that sort of scenarios. So it should be as comprehensive as possible. There is always a scope of improvement, but we have to make that sort of precise judgment that what is the level of expertise, that how we can within the considerations of resources, what sort of thing we can bring that will help for students to make them compete as a level playing field, and that can foster a kind of equitable assessment of the students to bring them to the colleges. Then we have to establish the career partnership with industries, because this is one of the biggest problem that we have identified at the start of the presentation, that even in the engineering, which is a student get admitted after having passing through a competitive exam, the students are after graduating from their programs, they are not market ready. That's why we need that career partnership with industries and understand what sort of skill which is required, and we have to impart those skill in the students during the undergraduate studies. Then we have to make them attend a tailored industry programs, because if they want to become research scientists, if they want to become a farmer, or they want to become agriculture scientist, they need to go through those tailored industry programs, but that will help them to get those skills and become better when once they will go in the industry as an economic agent. Then we have we can provide a kind of framework where students should have access to mentorship, evaluation, assessment, and that will make them market ready. Then ultimately we have mapped student experiences with the learning objectives and update the programs. So we have heard this sort of multiple times complaints that the things that we are learning in schools that 15 years back, things that was in the practice. So that gap should be minimized, because still if you look up in the academia trail behind the industries, and that is that should not be the scenario, because academics things should be ahead of things which is getting done in the industry, and that will create us to build a healthy progressive population that is going to take us to the Vishwaguru position. We can move to next slide. Yes. So we have seen things like yes, we have seen the things like that. What is the skill assessment? Why it is required? What are the learning challenges that we have in India? How we can create an integrated skill-based society? What will be the role of government? What the role of other agencies? So now I am open to questions, any questions related to things that I have discussed in last 1 hour 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, sir. So definitely the session was live on our YouTube channel. So कोई भी हमें हमारे social media platform से देख रहा है, so I request questions. जिनका भी कोई भी सवाल है, they can drop their question into the chat box so that our team can convey your questions to the expert directly, ताकि आप अपने सवालों का जवाब पा सकें. उससे पहले जैसा कि सेशन के स्टार्टिंग में हमने बताया था कि पहले हम सेशन कंप्लीट करेंगे, देन वील अंडरस्टैंड अबाउट हुनर इंडिया एज वेल. सो तब तक के लिए मैं आप सबके साथ अपनी स्क्रीन को शेयर करूंगी और हम हुनर इंडिया वेबसाइट के बारे में जानेंगे कि हुनर इंडिया बेसिकली क्या है और क्या क्या बेनिफिट आपको वेबसाइट से मिल सकते हैं. आई बिलीव माई स्क्रीन इज विजिबल. सो हम हुनर इंडिया की बात कर रहे हैं. जब हम हुनर इंडिया बोलते हैं तो एज वी ऑलरेडी मेंशन कि ये भारत का पहला सिंगल विंडो सॉल्यूशन है जो हर एज ग्रुप की लर्निंग नीड को केटर करता है. यानी स्कूल गोइंग किड, कॉलेज गोइंग स्टूडेंट, कॉम्पिटिटिव अपेयरिंग कैंडिडेट, साथ ही एस्पायरिंग एंटरप्रेन्योर्स, सबके लिए ये सिंगल विंडो सॉल्यूशन है. अगर हम बात करें स्कूल स्टूडेंट्स के लिए, तो स्कूल स्टूडेंट्स के लिए करिकुलम, स्पेशली बोर्ड करिकुलम में सीबीएसई, आईसीएसई एंड आईएससी का करिकुलम, ऑल सब्जेक्ट तीनों स्ट्रीम्स जो साइंस, कॉमर्स एंड ह्यूमैनिटीज स्टूडेंट्स को मिल जाती है विद माइंड मैप्स. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट स्कूल स्टूडेंट्स के लिए स्किलिंग कोर्सेज, फाउंडेशन कोर्सेज जिन स्टूडेंट्स को कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम में अपेयर होना है, करियर काउंसलिंग के लेक्चर्स, प्रोजेक्ट वर्क, प्रोजेक्ट टूर्स, entrepreneurship development program for students, computer courses and language courses मिलते हैं. According to NEP National Education Policy, इस बार भी और पुराने जितने भी न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी के गाइडलाइंस आए थे, स्कूल्स एंड कॉलेजेस के लिए इट इज नाउ कंपल्सरी टू प्रोवाइड स्किल एजुकेशन. यानी थ्योरेटिकल से हटके कुछ प्रैक्टिकल लर्निंग एंड स्किल बेस्ड लर्निंग स्कूल्स को अपने स्टूडेंट्स के लिए कराना जरूरी है. एनईपी के अकॉर्डिंग लैंग्वेज कोर्सेज भी जरूरी है, स्किल कोर्सेज भी जरूरी है, प्रोजेक्ट वर्क भी इम्पोर्टेंट है, साथ ही साथ एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप स्टडीज भी इम्पोर्टेंट है. तो हमने कोशिश करी है अकॉर्डिंग टू एनईपी, अकॉर्डिंग टू न्यू गाइडलाइंस, जैसा करिकुलम वो चाहते हैं वैसा हम आपको प्रोवाइड कर पाए, जिसमें स्किल लर्निंग के साथ साथ एंटरप्रेन्योरियल स्टडीज भी हो, करिकुलम भी इंक्लूडेड हो, लैंग्वेज कोर्सेज इंक्लूडेड हो, रोबोटिक्स इंक्लूडेड हो, कंप्यूटर कोर्सेज इंक्लूडेड हो, ताकि आप अपस्किल बन सके. नेक्स्ट अप हुनर इंडिया कॉलेज डैशबोर्ड भी ऑफर करता है. जब हम कॉलेज बोलते हैं तो जो मेजरली जो कंसर्न है कॉलेज स्टूडेंट का, जिस तरह के कोर्सेज वो ढूंढ रहे हैं उस तरह के कोर्सेज हम अपने वेबसाइट पर प्रोवाइड करते हैं. जब हम ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज की बात करते हैं तो सबसे पहली चीज आती है अफोर्डेबिलिटी एंड क्वालिटी. अवेलेबिलिटी तो इंडियन मार्केट में है बट अफोर्डेबिलिटी एंड क्वालिटी नहीं है. लेकिन हुनर इंडिया में अगर हम बात करें तो मिनिमम टोकन साइज जो कोर्सेज का है वो 250 रुपीज से स्टार्ट होता है और कोई भी स्टूडेंट इजिली इन कोर्सेज को एनरोल कर सकता है. तो कॉलेज डैशबोर्ड में हम कुछ जॉब ओरिएंटेड यानी प्रोफेशनल कैटेगरी के कोर्सेज ऑफर करते हैं, फॉलोइंग अप विद आईटी कोर्सेज, टेक्निकल कोर्सेज, सम इंडस्ट्री रेडी कोर्सेज इन केस समवन इज विलिंग टू सेट अप अ पर्टिकुलर इंडस्ट्री, हॉबी कोर्सेज, स्टार्टअप प्रोग्राम, इंडस्ट्रियल टूर्स जिसमें हमें वर्चुअल इंडस्ट्रियल टूर्स मिलते हैं, प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट्स, करियर काउंसलिंग एंड मल्टीपल लैंग्वेज कोर्सेज हम ऑफर करते हैं. कॉलेज डैशबोर्ड में आईटी में मोर देन 30 इन डिमांड आईटी कोर्सेज हमने कवर किए हैं, जिसमें लैंग्वेज, एप्लीकेशन डेवलपमेंट, वेब डेवलपमेंट, ये सब सीखने को मिलता है, फॉलोइंग अप विद रोबोटिक्स एंड मशीन लर्निंग. प्रोफेशनल कैटेगरी के कोर्सेज में डिजिटल मार्केटिंग, सोशल मीडिया मार्केटिंग, एसईओ, गूगल एड्स, इन्फ्लुएंसर मार्केटिंग, ऑटो कैड, ऑटो रेविट जैसे कोर्सेज देखने को मिलते हैं. तो यहाँ पे 80 प्लस कोर्सेज प्रोफेशनल कैटेगरी में, फॉलोइंग अप विद 30 प्लस कोर्सेज आईटी की कैटेगरी में, एंड इन टेक्निकल कैटेगरी हॉबी कोर्सेज यहाँ पर आपको और एडिशनल कोर्सेज मिल जाते हैं. यहाँ पर हुनर इंडिया ने एग्रोनॉमी भी कवर करने की कोशिश करी है, यानी हाइड्रोफोनिक्स, रूफटॉप फार्मिंग, ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग, मशरूम कल्टीवेशन जैसे कोर्सेज भी कॉलेज स्टूडेंट्स को मिलते हैं. नेक्स्ट अब हमारा एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप सेगमेंट है. एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप सेगमेंट में बेसिकली हम सबसे पहले तो इंडस्ट्रियल डॉक्यूमेंट्रीज प्रोवाइड करते हैं. इन केस आपको किसी भी इंडस्ट्री का इंसाइट चाहिए लेकिन आपको नहीं पता है कि वो इंडस्ट्री का इंसाइट क्या है, या आप नहीं अच्छा कंटेंट ढूंढ पा रहे, तो यहाँ पर वर्चुअल इंडस्ट्रियल टूर्स की तरह इंडस्ट्रियल डॉक्यूमेंट्रीज हैं जो कि आपको किसी एक पर्टिकुलर इंडस्ट्री की इंटरनल इंसाइट्स के बारे में जानने में मदद करेंगी. कि फॉर एग्जांपल अगर कोई मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट सेटअप करना है तो उसमें कितना लैंड एरिया रिक्वायर्ड होगा, कितना कौन कौन सा मशीनरी लगेगा, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कंजप्शन कितना लगेगा, कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, वर्किंग कैपिटल कितना होगा, स्किल्ड अनस्किल्ड स्टाफ कितना चाहिए, इस तरीके की चीजें यहाँ पर कवर करी गई है। फॉलोइंग अप विद बिजनेस आइडियाज। बिजनेस आइडिया स्पेशली क्यूरेटेड है स्कूल कॉलेज के स्टूडेंट्स के लिए या किसी भी एस्पायरिंग एंटरप्रेन्योर के लिए, कि अगर आपको लगता है कि आपके पास एरिया है, आपके पास कैपिटल है, लेकिन आइडिया नहीं है, तो बिजनेस आइडिया का सेगमेंट आपको हेल्प करेगा एक अप्रोप्रिएट आइडिया ढूंढने में, जिससे आप अपने प्लान को एग्जीक्यूट करने में आपको मदद मिलेगी। नेक्स्ट अब प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट्स। एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप सेगमेंट प्रोटोटाइप प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट भी ऑफर करता है। प्रोटोटाइप प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट में बिजनेस का वर्किंग इकोनॉमिक्स होगा बेसिकली। आप इस प्रोटोटाइप प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट के रेफरेंस से अपना कस्टमाइज प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट बना सकते हैं। हमारे पास एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप सेगमेंट में ईडीपी प्रोग्राम भी है, जो कि 100 आवर्स का ईडीपी प्रोग्राम है, जो कि स्पेशली एस्पायरिंग एंटरप्रेन्योर्स के लिए क्रिएट किया गया है बाय एक्सपर्ट्स, जिसमें आपको सेलिंग, मार्केटिंग, ब्रांडिंग, टैक्सेशन, एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप की हिस्ट्री, टाइप ऑफ कंपनीज, टाइप ऑफ रिस्क एंड इट्स माइटिगेशन जैसे टॉपिक्स सीखने को मिलते हैं। फॉलोइंग अप विद गवर्नमेंट स्कीम्स एंड लोन एप्लीकेशन कर की जितने भी इंफॉर्मेशन होती है विद डॉक्यूमेंटेशन प्रोसीजर आपको यहाँ पर मिलती है। लास्ट बट नॉट द लीस्ट हमारे पास कॉम्पिटेटिव प्रिपरेशन का डैशबोर्ड है। कॉम्पिटेटिव प्रिपरेशन डैशबोर्ड में हुनर इंडिया कॉम्पिटेटिव एंड एंट्रेंस एग्जाम दोनों ही कवर करता है। यहाँ पर आईआईटी जेईई, नीट, बैंक में आईबीपीएस, आरआरबी एंड एसबीआई, फॉलोइंग अप विद फाउंडेशन कोर्सेज, एसएससी के एग्जाम जैसे एमटीएस, जीडी, सीएजीएल एंड सीएचएसएल, डिफेंस में एनडीए, रेलवेज में असिस्टेंट टोको पायलट, एनटीपीसी, सीबीटी, इस तरीके के एग्जाम्स की सेल्फ बेस्ड प्रिपरेशन आपके लिए हुनर इंडिया लेकर आया है। आईआईटी जेईई के जो कोर्सेज है वो स्पेशली टीचर्स फ्रॉम कोटा जिन्होंने इसे रिकॉर्ड किया है, ताकि स्टूडेंट को एक बहुत ही अच्छी इंसाइट मिल पाए जो भी अपने एंट्रेंस एग्जाम की तैयारी कर रहे हैं। अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट यहाँ पर आपको टेस्ट सीरीज भी मिल जाती है। Apart from test series and all the segment, all the content that हुनर इंडिया is providing, यहाँ पर हम हर हफ्ते वेबिनार्स भी करते हैं डिफरेंट टॉपिक्स पर। आप हुनर इंडिया पर आकर वेबिनार्स के लिए भी रजिस्टर कर सकते हैं एंड अपनी सीट बुक कर सकते हैं। ये वेबिनार्स हमारे सोशल मीडिया चैनल्स पर भी लाइव होते हैं, तो आप डायरेक्टली वहां से भी ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं। हुनर इंडिया पे रजिस्टर करने के लिए आप डायरेक्टली hunarindia.org.in की वेबसाइट पर आकर अपना इंक्वायरी प्लेस कर सकते हैं, या आप हुनर इंडिया का एप्लीकेशन भी डाउनलोड कर सकते हैं प्ले स्टोर से। सो दैट्स इट फॉर हुनर इंडिया। आई होप आपको वेब टूर अच्छा लगा होगा। आई गेस हमारे पास अभी कोई क्वेश्चंस नहीं है।
No,
सो
we
जी,
have two questions.
ओके।
So, first question is how beneficial are small online skill courses? So basically, a small online skill courses, like, they help you to become relevant with the market, because every time you cannot go to universities and you cannot, like, because you have like professional commitments. In that case, like, these small courses help you to bridge the gap, which because of, like, the advancement in the technology, which, like, has emerged between your skill level and the state of the art, the skill which is required to become relevant for the industry of the modern world. So that's why, like, suppose if large language models came, then, like, the people who were experts in data science, they didn't have idea, like, this particular innovation is coming. In that case, you just go and attend a small course that what is LLM, what sort of, like, the theoretical fundamentals which is behind this, like, LLM. So they will make themselves ready to understand the modern development in the LLM domain, and then they will be able to, like, they perform as a professional, because they have the requisite background to become a great data professor. So that's why those online small courses, they are enablers with the modern technology. So what are the next question is, what career opportunities or advancement can this skill course lead to? Yes. So because once the technology changes in the domain, then all those industry, they want to embrace the new technology and they want to upgrade their offerings based on the new technology. And if you are in a job or if you are a professional in the market, then once you understand the new technology, you will have, like, the business opportunities available to you. because you understand the modern technology. Like, you heard, like, there's an insurance ad, the purani aadate badal dalo, because, like, you compare ads, and then, so because the new aadate is, like, that is that you have to compare when you are, like, getting a insurance quotes. So that sort of, like, it will open new opportunities. The kind of example I have given are the robotic surgery. So if the doctors who are already doing the surgery by hand, and if they understand, like, with the short course, that how the robotic surgery happens, because he already has expertise, but robotic surgery is further going to enhance his, like, his capability. Like, for example, if you look up, like, when the surgery happens around, like, some legs and bones, still they have to make those cuts by hand. So if robots is going to make that cuts, then it is going to be, like, much more precise compared to, like, the cutting by hands. So it is going to also, like, add up the speed, add up more controls, because the machine is going to do that thing. And that will happen because of, like, he won't go to, like, an undergrad course and get himself enrolled for 4 years. This will happen through these small courses, and this will, like, open more opportunity for him, because within this given time he can, like, address more surgeries. So that sort of, like, advancements, and, like, having access to new technologies to small courses can help you to, like, the bloom your career.
Thank you very much, sir. Three more questions we got from our social media platform. So the question
Yes.
is from Mr. Manish. How adaptive learning can cater to different learning styles?
Yes, so basically, learning styles, most of the time, like, some people are comfortable with a particular kind of, learning style. But adaptive learning is going to give you, like, the idea that how quickly and how slowly you are learning. So that will help you to, like, understand what are your shortcomings, and what are the, like, things which you are doing in a, like, with a great ease. So that sort of, assessment is going to help you.
One more question from Miss Anjali Mehra. What are the benefits of real-time feedback and personalized learning pathways?
Uh, the real-time feedback and personalized learning, when you look up the kind of, when you play a video game. So in video game, if you make mistakes, sometimes it, like, it shows you, like, how you're making mistake. And then you will, like, keep track of, like, you are not going to repeat that mistake. And similar sort of, like, a training happens, like, if you are fighter pilot or somebody who is, like, going to do things with, like, the that really require extreme precision. If you are a doctor making a cut, so if you have kind of, that sort of, the interactive feedback, then it will help you to quickly, like, uh, correct your mistake and become a better economic agent.
Thank you very much, sir. Last question from a device, Vivo V12. I get Mr. Aryan. Yeah. So what the question is, what is the role of AI and machine learning in tailoring learning experiences?
Yes. So AI and machine learning is, like, AI is nothing but a kind of, the decision based on machine learning. Machine learning is a kind of learning from the experiences. So experiences could be, like, any kind of a structured and unstructured data, images, pictures. So AI and machine learning has a kind of, the power that it can think as a human. Just leveraging the data, it can think as a human. So suppose uh, if you need, like, teacher to understand, like, suppose if you have to understand, like, what is the how to solve the quadratic equations, then you need a teacher who can, like, go and physically in person teach you. But teacher has a kind of, limitations, because either you have a recorded video, you cannot have an interactive session. But suppose if you can train a bot like that, and if you are making a mistake and bot is immediately saying that, hey, you are trying to solve this quadratic equation, but the curve that you are drawing do not represent the, like, the quadratic curve, it is looking like a linear curve. And you will immediately understand, like, somewhere where, like, the points that you are putting for, like, the framing that curve is not proper, and you will go immediately, you will improve your mistakes. So similar sort of, like, the feedback can happen in terms of, like, when you are doing some more challenging work, like, kind of, when you are doing coding. So when you do coding, and when you have to, like, decode, then you have to go and, like, run the code line by line, line by line. But if you have an AI agent behind the scene, that agent can run that code in phases and tell you, like, hey, you have an error in, like, line number 34. And that error is because of, like, because that code, like, the AI has already seen like multiple that kind of code. It can even tell you that that particular line has like this kind of error. So that will help you to understand your mistakes quickly and able to fix it with the help of ML and AI.
Thank you very much, sir. One last question we got. How adaptive learning can help with skill development?
So basically, a skill development is ultimately like, that what sort of like, the thing which you pick up during your training that will make you an efficient economic agent. So the adaptive learning helps you to, like, give you, like, what is your learning curve, and based on that learning curve, it shapes, like, your learning path. So when you are like, suppose if you are like, understanding that how to do basically a building thing, then if somebody understand, like, you are very good at, like, making this particular kind of joint, but you are struggling in making a different kind of joint, then it will take you to, like, what are the tricks which is required for, like, making that kind of joint. So it will help you to precisely understand that where, like, you're making that mistake, and then it will, like, help you to become a better professional.
Thank you very much, sir, for answering the question. I guess अभी हमारे पास कोई भी क्वेश्चन चैट बॉक्स में नहीं है. सबसे पहले तो सर बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आज अपना समय हमें देने के लिए. और आप आई होप सबको बहुत ज्यादा एक्सप्लेनेशन पसंद आया होगा. ये वीडियो जिन्होंने भी आधा ज्वाइन किया या मिस कर दिया, ये वीडियो आपको हमारे YouTube चैनल पर रिकॉर्डेड मिल जाएगा. हुनर इंडिया के चैनल से दोबारा इस सेशन को देख सकते हैं. जिन्होंने भी आज हमें संडे के दिन ज्वाइन किया देखा, उन सबको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. थैंक यू वेरी मच सर फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस टुडे. हैव अ नाइस डे एवरीवन.
My pleasure.
आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा. आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा. भारत की संतान है हम, जगत गुरु का नाम है हम. आर्यभट्ट और सुश्रुत जैसे ऋषियों का अभिमान है हम. तक्षशिला और नालंदा सा गौरव जिसका, ऐसे भारत की यारों पहचान है हम. विश्व पटल पर फहरेगा तिरंगा प्यारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा. आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा. मेक इन इंडिया, स्किल इंडिया का हो सपना पूरा. डिजिटल और स्टार्टअप इंडिया अब ना रहे अधूरा. मुद्रा एमी सेमी उद्यमी अपने सूर्य शिखर हैं. हिंदुस्तानी व्यापारी होगा अब जग का सूरा. बिजनेस के आकाश में चमचमकेगा भारत तारा. वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। मेहनत कस खेती कर किसान भरता है अन्न भंडारे। लाल देश का फौजी बन तन खड़ा है सरहद द्वारे। रोटी देता एक लाल है लाज बचैया दूजा। नमन हिंद की सेना करते भारतवंशी सारे। एक अखंड भारत का तुम ही सत्य सहारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। भारतवंशी आन से बान से ध्यान से, धर्म आत्मनिर्भरता का निभाएंगे जी जान से। त्याग विदेशी अपनाएंगे पूर्ण स्वदेशी, गांव से ग्लोब स्वदेशी हो सर्व सम्मान से। एक राष्ट्र हो श्रेष्ठ राष्ट्र गूंजे चहुनारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा।
इसका मार्ग एक ही है, आत्मनिर्भर भारत।